Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be diving into the world of social cognitive neuroscience.
Ooh.
It's basically, you know how our brains are wired for like all those really tricky social situations?
Right.
We're working with excerpts from this paper called Social Cognitive Neuroscience, a review of core processes.
Oh, okay.
It's a little dense, I'll be honest, but
Yeah.
we're going to break it down and make it super interesting.
Yeah.
Really, it's like we're peeking under the hood of your brain
Mm-hmm.
to see like what makes you tick, in social situations.
I love that analogy. It's like
Yeah.
we're taking apart one of those high-tech social gadgets
Right.
to see all the circuits and the wiring, except we're talking about, brain regions and neural pathways.
Exactly. And speaking of those brain regions,
Yeah.
the paper starts by diving into how we understand others.
Okay.
And it talks about these two key ways that we know a mind,
Mhm.
theory of mind and empathy.
Interesting.
What stood out to you the most in this section?
Well, it's fascinating because we have these two distinct ways of understanding other people's minds.
Okay.
Theory of mind is like being a detective,
Yeah.
You're trying to figure out what is going on in somebody else's head based on their behavior. Almost like solving a puzzle, and we start doing this surprisingly early.
Yeah, the paper mentioned that by age 4,
Yeah,
most kids have a pretty good grasp of this concept.
exactly.
It's pretty young to be playing like mental detective, right?
It is, and even babies show these early signs of recognizing intentions and goals.
Wow.
There's research that shows that infants as young as 6 months old can pick up on those cues.
So we're practically born with these social detective skills.
That seems that way.
That's so cool. But empathy is a different story.
Yeah.
Right? It's not about figuring someone out.
Right.
It's about feeling what they're feeling.
Exactly. Empathy is more like stepping into someone else's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
So, think about the last time that you saw somebody get hurt. Did you wince, maybe even feel a twinge of pain yourself?
Right.
That's empathy in action.
Yeah.
What's really cool is that there's actually fascinating research showing that when people see someone else in pain, the pain areas of their own brain actually light up.
Like on. So you're telling me that just by watching someone else in pain,
Yeah.
my brain is actually reacting
Yes.
as if I'm the one experiencing it.
It is. It's like their brain is mirroring the experience of the other person.
That's incredible. And it's not just limited to pain.
Okay.
Remember the Wicker study from 2003?
I don't.
The participants were watching other people smell something disgusting, and guess what?
What?
The same areas of their brain lit up as if they were smelling it themselves.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right.
That's why I can barely watch those eating contest shows where people are scarfing down all that weird food.
Right.
My stomach literally churns.
Yeah.
Just watching, my brain's going, nope, not for me.
That's a great example.
Yeah. It highlights how deeply wired we are for empathy. But speaking of wiring,
Okay.
this paper actually goes into the specific brain regions
Yeah.
that are involved in all this social processing.
Wow.
It's we have a map of our social brains.
That's pretty amazing.
It is.
Okay, so let's map it out then. Where do we even begin?
Okay, well, two of the key players in this social detective duo are the dorsomedial prefrontal cortex, or DMPFC,
Okay.
and the posterior superior temporal sulcus, or PSTS.
Those are some serious brain region names.
I know, right?
But tell me more about this social detective duo. It sounds intriguing.
Okay, so think of the DMPFC as the thought decoder.
Okay.
That region is buzzing with activity whenever we try to figure out what somebody else is thinking.
Oh, and
Especially if it takes some mental effort,
Right.
Like when you're trying to decode your friend's cryptic text messages or something.
Oh, so that's what's happening when I'm staring at my phone.
Exactly.
Just trying to figure out if they're being sarcastic. Okay, got it. The DMPFC is working overtime.
Yes.
So what about the PSTS, the other half of this dynamic duo?
So the PSTS is all about action.
Okay.
It's like the action decoder. It's constantly analyzing these subtle movements and body language to help us understand what people are doing and why.
Oh, so it's like the PSTS is picking up on all those nonverbal cues.
Yeah.
Like facial expressions,
Yes,
gestures.
Exactly.
Even if we're not consciously aware of it. It's like our brain's secret decoder ring for social interactions.
Exactly. And this region actually links back to those early baby skills.
Oh, wow.
Recognizing biological motion that we talked about earlier. It's
Right.
all connected.
This is so fascinating.
It is.
We've got the DMPFC decoding thoughts, the PSTS decoding actions.
Yes.
All of this is happening, and we don't even realize it.
Right.
Our brains are working so hard behind the scenes
They are.
to make sense of the social world.
Yes. And we can't forget about the amygdala.
Oh, yeah, the amygdala. You've probably heard this
Of
one.
course.
It's like the brain's alarm system,
Right.
especially when it comes to like strong emotions like fear.
Okay.
So in social situations, it helps us react quickly to potential threats.
That explains why my heart races when I accidentally bump into my boss at the grocery store.
Right.
Like, my amygdala is going, warning,
Okay.
warning, awkward social situation detected.
Exactly. It's that quick, instinctive response
Yeah.
that helps us navigate those like potentially tricky situations.
So we've got the social detective duo in the DMPFC and the PSTS, and then the ever-vigilant amygdala keeping us on our toes.
Right.
Are there any other key players in this social brain map we should know about?
There's one more I think you'll find interesting, the insula.
Okay.
It's fascinating because it's involved in both like physical and social pain.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
So you're saying that, like, when I feel left out or rejected,
Right.
my brain is processing that in a similar way to, like, physical pain?
Exactly.
No wonder it hurts so much. Right.
Ouch.
Research by Eisenberger and Lieberman actually found
Okay.
that the insula lights up
Mm.
when people experience rejection, just like it does when they experience physical pain.
So it's not just in my head, it's like actually happening in my brain.
It is?
Wow, that explains why like social connection is so important for our well-being.
Right.
We're literally wired to feel pain when those connections are threatened.
Exactly. It highlights how deeply social creatures we are
Yeah.
and how those social experiences shape our brains.
So we've been talking a lot about understanding others,
Right.
but what about understanding ourselves?
Yeah.
How does our brain grasp that concept of me?
That's a great question. And it's funny you should mention that because the paper actually shifts gears
Okay.
to how the brain processes the self.
Okay.
And it turns out our brains have some pretty dedicated systems for this.
Really?
It's like we're all walking around with a little me headquarters inside our skulls. There's a lot going on in our brains to help us kind of build and maintain a sense of self.
Mm-hmm.
For example, think about recognizing yourself in the mirror.
Oh, right. The paper mentioned that we don't actually start doing that until around age 2.
Yeah.
Do you remember when, like, your kids first recognize themselves in the mirror?
Oh, I do. It's like a light bulb goes off.
Right.
It's fascinating because recognizing mom or other familiar faces actually happens much earlier, around like 9 months.
Wow.
So there's a clear distinction there between recognizing like familiar faces and understanding that one of those faces is actually you.
That's so interesting.
It is.
I guess it makes sense that understanding the self kind of develops gradually over time.
Yeah.
We're not like born with this fully formed sense of me.
Right.
It's something that we build through experience and interactions with the world.
And it's not just about recognizing ourselves visually either.
No.
There's also that weird, is this my hand feeling?
Yeah, gosh, yes.
Like when there's a delay on a video call and you're like,
Right.
your movements feel out of sync.
I hate that feeling.
Yeah.
What is going on in my brain when that happens?
So that's your right lateral parietal cortex, or LPAC, at work.
Okay.
It's involved in monitoring our body's position in space and detecting these mismatches
Okay.
between what we see and what we feel.
So when I see my hand moving on the screen,
Yeah.
but I don't feel that corresponding movement in my own body,
Right.
my LPAC is like, wait a minute, something's not right here.
Precisely. And this region is actually also linked to out-of-body experiences, which are often described as a disruption in like the normal sense of self-location.
Okay, that's getting a little too trippy for me.
I know, right?
So we've got the LPAC keeping tabs on our like physical sense of self.
Right.
But what about our internal sense of self?
Yeah.
Like, you know, all those thoughts, feelings, and experiences that make us who we are.
That's where the medial prefrontal cortex, or MPFC, comes in. This region lights up when we think about our own traits and feelings.
Oh.
It's like the brain's self-reflection center.
So all that time that we spend thinking about ourselves, analyzing like our every thought and feeling,
Right.
it's actually reflected in the size of our brain.
It is. And you know what's really cool?
What?
This area is actually bigger in humans
Really?
compared to other primates.
Seriously?
Yeah, research suggests that the MPFC is like disproportionately larger in humans.
Wow.
Perhaps because we spend so much time engaged in self-reflection.
Mm,
We're constantly thinking about ourselves, our motivations, our relationships.
right.
It's a big part of what makes us human.
Fascinating.
So, all that time you spend thinking about yourself,
Yeah.
you actually have a larger brain region
Okay.
dedicated to that compared to other primates.
That's amazing. But all this self-reflection can be exhausting, right?
I know what you mean.
Sometimes I just wish I could like turn my brain off
Yeah.
and stop overthinking everything.
But it's not always about overthinking.
Well,
Our brains also play a crucial role in helping us control our behavior, especially those pesky impulses we all have.
oh, you mean self-control?
Yes.
Tell me about it. I have a constant battle going on
Uh-huh.
between my rational side and my inner impulse monster,
Right.
especially when it comes to like resisting that second slice of cake.
We've all been there.
Oh, for sure.
The good news is our brains have a built-in control network
Okay.
to help us tame those inner monsters.
I like that.
And the key players here
Mm-hmm.
are the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, or DACC,
Okay.
and the lateral prefrontal cortex, or LPFC.
Okay. Those names are ringing a bell, but refresh my memory. What exactly do those regions do?
Okay, so think of the DACC as like the alarm system.
Okay.
It's detecting conflicts
Right.
between our goals and those tempting impulses.
Okay.
So let's say your goal is to eat healthy,
Yeah.
but you're craving that cake.
Right.
The DACC is going to flag that conflict and send a signal that some self-control is needed.
Okay, so then the LPFC steps in as like the brakes, right? It's the voice of reason reminding us of our goals.
Right.
Helping us stay on track.
The LPFC is like the executive function center,
Okay.
helping us plan, make decisions, and resist those tempting distractions.
So it's a constant back and forth
Yes.
between the DACs pushing us toward like immediate gratification and the LPFC trying to keep us focused on the long game.
Exactly.
No wonder self-control can feel so exhausting.
It can be, but there are some fascinating strategies
yeah.
that can actually make self-control a bit easier.
Oh, good.
Remember affect labeling.
Affect labeling, remind me what that is.
It's simply putting your feelings into words.
Okay.
So instead of trying to like suppress or ignore a negative emotion,
Right.
you just acknowledge it and describe it.
Okay.
And research shows that this can actually calm down the amygdala's emotional response.
So if I'm feeling stressed,
Yeah.
I should just say to myself, I am feeling very stressed right now.
Exactly.
That's it.
That's the idea.
Wow.
The act of labeling the emotion seems to shift the processing from the emotional amygdala to the more cognitive LPFC,
Interesting.
giving you more control over your reaction.
So you're telling me that just putting my feelings into words
Mm-hmm.
can actually change my brain activity.
It can.
That's mind-blowing.
I know, right?
I could see how this could be helpful,
Yeah.
especially if you're someone who struggles with like strong emotions,
Right.
or tends to overthink things.
Exactly. And it connects to a larger point about
Okay.
how our brains are wired for social living.
Mm-hmm.
We're constantly interacting with others, and those interactions really shape who we are
Yeah.
and how we behave.
Speaking of social interactions, earlier we talked about mirror neurons.
Yes.
About how they might help us understand other people's actions and intentions.
Uh-huh.
Those are still blowing my mind.
I know, they're pretty amazing.
They are.
These incredible brain cells fire both when we do something
Right.
and when we observe someone else doing the same thing.
So if I see you yawn,
Yeah.
my mirror neurons might fire as if I'm yawning myself.
That's one theory.
And that could be why yawning is so contagious.
It could be. It's still a bit of a mystery,
Right.
but it suggests a powerful link
Yeah.
between our own actions and our perception of others.
That's like we're wired for empathy and social connection from the very beginning.
It seems that way.
But it's not all sunshine and roses, right?
Unfortunately not.
Social pressure can be a real thing.
It definitely can't. The paper mentions some conformity studies
Okay.
using brain imaging, and the results are pretty fascinating.
Okay.
These studies show that when people go against the group, even if they know the group is wrong,
Right, yeah.
it triggers activity in the DACC.
Oh, wow. So conforming to the group, even if we disagree, might actually reduce that feeling of conflict in our brains.
It seems that way. And it makes sense from like an evolutionary perspective.
Right.
In our ancestral past, being part of the group was essential for survival.
Yeah.
Going against the grain could have been literally life-threatening.
So that deep-seated need to belong is still wired into our brains today.
It is.
That's pretty powerful. It makes you wonder how much of our behavior is driven by these ancient neural circuits
Yeah.
versus our own individual choices.
That's a great question and one that researchers are still exploring.
For sure. But it's not all about conformity and social pressure.
Right.
The paper also talks about how our brains reward us
Okay.
for fairness and cooperation.
Oh, that's good to hear.
It is.
So it's not all doom and gloom
Not at all.
when it comes to social interactions.
A study by Tabivnia and colleagues actually found
Okay.
that when people experience fairness in social interactions,
Uh-huh.
it activates brain regions associated with reward and motivation,
Interesting.
like the ventromedial prefrontal cortex,
That's it.
the ventral striatum. So it literally feels good to be treated fairly.
It does.
That makes so much sense.
Right.
We're wired to seek out fairness and cooperation
Yeah.
because it feels good.
Yes.
And it helps us build those strong social bonds
Exactly.
that are so crucial for our well-being. Like our brains are like constantly, weighing the costs and benefits
Yeah.
of social interactions and trying to figure out like the best way
Right.
to navigate this whole complex social world.
It's a constant dance
Like
between our innate wiring and our own individual experiences.
this whole deep dive has been mind-blowing.
I know, right?
It's amazing to think that all these like complex social processes,
Yeah.
understanding others, developing a sense of self,
Mm-hmm.
controlling our impulses, navigating social pressure,
Right.
all boil down to like, the firing of neurons
Uh-huh.
in these specific brain regions.
It really is. And the more we learn about these systems, the more we understand about ourselves and
Yeah.
the social dynamics that shape our world.
It makes you wonder though, doesn't it?
It does.
Like how much of our behavior is truly driven by our own conscious choices
Right.
versus these like ancient neural circuits
Yeah.
that have been shaped by evolution over millions of years.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
Nature versus nurture playing out in the circuitry of our brain.
It's like we're all walking around with these like incredibly complex social machines
Mm-hmm.
inside our heads.
Yeah.
And we're just beginning to understand how they work.
Right.
What stood out to you the most in this paper?
Well, for me, the distinction between like internally focused and externally focused processing
Okay.
was particularly intriguing.
Yeah.
It seems that our brains have these distinct networks
Mm-hmm.
for reflecting on our own inner world
Right.
and for processing information from the outside world.
That is fascinating. Do you think we tend to favor one mode over the other?
That's a great question.
Like, are some people more focused on people's outward actions,
Mhm.
while others are more focused on trying to figure out their inner world?
I think this deep dive gives us some clues.
Yeah.
Maybe if we're more drawn to empathy and understanding other people's feelings,
Oh.
our medial prefrontal cortex might be more active.
Mm.
And if we're more analytical
Right.
and focused on observable behaviors,
Yeah.
our lateral regions might dominate.
Interesting.
It would be interesting to see if future research explores these individual differences
Yeah.
in processing styles.
I'd love to see that research.
Me too.
It would be so fascinating to know
Yeah.
if there are certain personality types
Uh-huh.
or even career paths that are associated with these different social processing styles.
Right. Like maybe therapists and counselors
Right.
are more tuned into those internal processes,
Mm-hmm.
while scientists and engineers are
Right.
more focused on external observation and analysis.
I can see that it would make sense that different skills and professions
Yeah.
would rely on different aspects of social cognition.
But ultimately, we all use both internal and external processing to navigate the social world.
So to recap our mind-blowing deep dive today,
Yes,
it seems that we have dedicated brain systems for navigating the social world,
we do.
from reading minds to controlling our own reactions
Uh-huh.
and everything in between.
And as we learn more about these systems, we gain a deeper understanding,
Yeah.
not only of ourselves, but also of the social dynamics that shape our world.
Well, this deep dive has given me a lot to think about.
I need to.
I'm suddenly very aware of all the complex social processing going on in my brain right now,
It is amazing, isn't it?
even in this simple conversation.
We take our social skills for granted, but there's so much happening beneath the surface
Right.
to make those interactions possible.
I feel like I need to go meditate now
That sounds like a great idea.
and let all this new information sink in.
A little mindfulness never hurts.
Oh, it doesn't.
Especially when you've just had your mind blown by social cognitive neuroscience.
Food for thought, listeners. What kind of social processor are you?
Yeah.
Do you tend to focus more on people's outward actions? Or are you always trying to figure out their inner world?
Right.
Maybe this deep dive gives you some clues. Share your thoughts. We'd love to keep this conversation going. Until next time, happy brain exploring.